Where'd all the months go? First things first, I need to apologize for the delay in getting this part ready and out the door, because some personal events happened to me the past few months that made me slow down quite a bit on this project. But a while ago, said events have ended entirely, thankfully, and really the only thing that stopped me was motivation, and I gained enough to give you Eternal Memories Part 3. We should talk about where Explorers of Sky fits into all this, since I gave an explanation on Time and Darkness and the pre-release material back in November. So I'm gonna give you a very interesting timeline on the Japanese unveiling to the launch of the game of Explorers of Sky. In January 2009, the game was announced, set for launch in April, and then the game came out in Japan in April. June 2009 came around, it was confirmed to be localized, and then October 2009 was the launch date for the Americas and Europe. Europe got in November. What? You thought there was a long explanation of tons of interviews being cited on why Explorers of Sky existed? Well, no, not that I can find at least. Sadly, I looked over and I couldn't find anything, and really all I could notice is that the game just came out without any attention whatsoever. Like, in Japan, it just pretty much was like, oh hey, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, like DX version, take it. So, yeah, people who played the game in Japan kind of knew what to expect, like Cerebi, who did an in-depth document on the website he has, which is how I learned about some of the changes from the game. But it may make you wonder, how did the game get a third version? I don't know. Honestly, I really don't know. They never explained. There weren't even any fancy Explorer's Guides or pre-order gifts to get with the game, like with Time and Darkness. Like how I got the Explorer's Guide in the last episode. In Japan, there was really not much of anything at all. There was really only like a gigantic primer guide that came out over here on launch day, the GameStop DVD for the third anime special, which I'll talk about a bit later, and some very, very hard to find plush toys that I'm still jealous I never got. I should have gotten that Shinx. But anyways, we're just about to move into my memories with the Explorers Saga. To clarify, the gameplay footage I'll be using for this video will be from the Sky version of the game, because that's the DX Ultimate version, so there'll be minor changes compared to my memories, which is mostly about the Time version, but it should get the point across well. As for the special episodes, I'm not gonna cover them in this episode, which kinda sounds contradictory because I was like, oh hey, I'm gonna cover like special episodes 5 and stuff in the last video and on Reddit. But because of how long this took to get out, I'm really stressed, I don't want to talk about it, and I feel it'd be better just to give a whole video on its own covering the special episodes I want to talk about. So, we have a big main and post story to get into, so let's jump right in. But first, I should point out where the video credits would go to, because I did have to ask permission again for these like gameplay clips I'm gonna show you. And therefore, it goes to the Aigu, or however you pronounce that, for letting me use his footage of every cutscene in the game. But ironically, I've been so slow on getting this out that not only did Rescue Team launch on the Wii U Virtual Console like I hoped for in Part 1, but Explorers of Sky did too, just like 2 months ago. Well, I do have a bit of my own footage to use now. Because of it, I don't have nearly enough to cover the whole game, so I'm going to be mostly using the Aigu's footage for consistency. But now, let's get right into things, cut the chase, and jump into Chapter 1 of the Explorer Saga. We are going to go to the world of Pokemon for the second time. Will you get to come back with me to the memories I had when I booted up my copy of Explorers of Time into my Nintendo DS Lite, the 20th of April of 2008. If you remember from Eternal Memories Part 1 back in September of 2015, I mentioned that when the Rescue Team games came out in the United States, I did not get them on launch day, only having to earn Red Rescue Team by doing well on a school spelling test and having to wait until the following Wednesday to pick it up. In the last episode, I mentioned how, after 2007 and Pokemon Pearl, I started to pre-order video games for the very first time, and that's how I got the whole fiasco with the DVD and the Time and Darkness Explorer's Guide because of the Playground rumors. Well, the conclusion of the pre-order craziness was that I ended up going to GameStop to pick up my pre-order of the Time version, which you can see right here. This is the same copy from 2008, same game card and bent manual inside. And finally happy that I got the game I wanted, I went home and started up the game, but I had to take a bath in a few minutes, cause on Sunday nights I'd always take a bath in a fancy dancy tub that was very nice, but point is, I kind of only had a few minutes to get the game set up before I would go dungeon crawling, so I wanted to get past the personality test. And even though I had a big, gigantic game guide with me, my issues with the game began before I even know what Pokemon I could become. Because Piplup was the main character in the anime special I was obsessed with at the time, I wanted to be a Piplup no matter what. Not like Rescue Team where I just had fate give me whatever Pokemon it wanted to. I was determined to get a Piplup at all costs for this game. Sadly, the official guide, no matter how hard I looked, even though I still don't think it has any section that details in depth about the personality quiz. It did not even tell you how to choose the answers to get some Pokemon. So my longer section didn't really know what to do, so I just kept starting over and over and over and over and over again, trying to get the same Pokemon I wanted, which was Piplup. Everyone that's played this game on replays and whatnot knows how I feel. Unless you go on GameFAQs and get a guide to get the point tallies for the different traits, you won't really know how to get the Pokemon. Unless you want to have Fate give you one, which in that case you'll get the Oddball starters, which I'll go in depth when we get the Super Mystery Dungeon, where I'll be able to talk about everyone that has ever been in the Mystery Dungeon game. 15 minutes later, a bit after my bath was ready because my Grovyle was a bit impatient but was willing to wait because I just got a new game, I finally got Piplup, so I chose Chikorita as my partner, considering how I loved it a lot from Red Rescue Team. But before I could read the story, I just had to put the game in sleep mode so I could take my bath, though I could have easily beat the first dungeon if I just took what I got the first time, in terms of the Pokemon that it gave me. So yeah, after a nice relaxing bath, I spent the next 2 hours working hard at the game, eager to see what the second chapter of the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon series would have in store. Right from the start, it started off very good, with an ominous storm at sea, a sign of someone getting injured and lost, a Pokemon on the beach. This was I had so many questions. Was that the human? Was that the partner? Was that someone else that was talking to me in the intro? Whatever the case, I had a very different point of view for this game, and that made me a bit excited to see what the story unfolded, considering how much Red Rescue Team meant to me. Of course, those were questions I'd have to get answers to as it shifted to my unconscious starter at the beach, because I had to wait until I saw my partner. Sadly, the partner in this game is nowhere near as good or as relatable as the one in the first game, kind of being more of a coward that doesn't know what to do and is kind of, stupid. So basically, the partner wanders about in front of the Wigglytuff Guild, which is a group of top-notch explorers. Hoping to join, the partner tries to enter the guild, only to be scared off by the Diglett-led security team, pretty much causing the partner to retreat in fear, upset that even with her prized possession, which is a stone, she couldn't gather the courage to enter the guild. Upon fleeing the scene, we see the two main boys in the game, which are Koffing and Zubat. Oh, if they only swapped out Zubat for Ekans, would it be a good Team Rocket tribute? Anyways, noticing that the partner has a special stone, they plot out how to steal it, just as you would expect from a bad group of delinquents. So, coming back to the beach, we see a lovely bubble show from the Krabby, which is kind of pretty, and back when I saw it, I thought it was pretty cute. Where we finally get to hear the first new piece of music in the main game, which is a lovely composition that sets the mood of the situation perfectly. All while the partner explains why the Krabby help make her feel happy anytime she visits the beach whenever they blow their bubbles. And then, she turns to the left, and the fateful encounter begins where she spots the hero. Upon waking up and realizing he transformed into a Pokemon with no memory, again, the hero is shocked. But of course I wasn't, because the game flat out told me in the personality test I was going to be a Piplup. But I digress. After a brief sigh of relief from the partner about you not being a bad Pokemon, she gets ambushed by the Zubat and Coughing duo from earlier. Upon getting mocked at a bit, Zubat steals the partner's stone, despite having nothing but wings to carry it, which means either it's a very light stone or Zubat has supernatural powers. Regardless, you are thrust into a mad dash to get it back, and upon going through the beach cave, which is not that long and very easy, along with it being stuck with a one-item inventory, you must confront the duo, who simply want to sell the relic for as much money as they could. Not wanting to argue anymore, you engage in the very first boss battle of the game, right off the bat. Of course, it's super easy being the first boss, and I knocked them out in a few turns. So after defeating the two delinquents, Zubat returns the stone, but before the two delinquents can run away, they give a fair warning about how the win was nothing but luck as they do so. An ominous sign, it seems. Now that you and your partner are alone, the partner expresses her history with the stone, which she is now dubbed the Relic Fragment. After stumbling upon it one day, she always had a dream to discover the true secrets behind it, and that's why she wants to join the guild, so she can go on adventures all over the world, so she can find treasures and discover the secret and the true power of her stone. Asking the hero for his guidance, you accept having nowhere else to go, and therefore we start the journey of the Explorer Saga, as an ominous temple shown in the background of the Sky version makes a grand appearance. Now, the story pretty much goes on its own route from here, with mostly filler content. Until we get to my most hated chapter of all, Chapter 6. Chapter 6 starts out innocently enough. The whole guild learns about the great field trip, motivating everyone to qualify for it. You know, happy times, work hard, you will qualify and have fun. The main duo decides to do the same. Until the partner noticed that the group of bullies from the very first chapter are now in the guild. Of course, after being taunted a bit by the duo of delinquents, the partner finally learns to stand up for herself, pointing out that they were easily defeated back at Beach Cave, until Coughing reveals that they have a secret weapon, and just by pure coincidence, the duo meets the leader, Skuntank. This little son of a is my least favorite character in the entire game, hands down, and that was from the moment I saw him climb down the ladder during my first playthrough. Right away, he pushes the hero out of the way and then sprays something at his face, knocking him into the center of the room as the rest of the guild gets covered in the foul stench. Upon learning about the big expedition, Team Skull makes their exit to plot their plan for action, leaving the duo to wonder what their main intent is. After a few days pass, Chatot reveals that they have 3 new allies for the expedition, and somehow Team Skull moves into the guild just to cause mischief, and no one knows that they are actually bad except you and your partner. As a 10-year-old, I have nagging questions. For one, why nominate them as experts instead of have them qualify like everyone else? Another question I had was, why didn't they suspect him just by looking at him? I mean, look at him! He's a mischievous little that's half dog type. And if Rescue Team taught me something, it's that you should never trust a ghost or dog type unless it's Absol, because he's cool. Anyways, the other members of the guild think this, and they question why on earth Wigglytuff would choose something so stupid to tag along their expedition. I was actually starting to feel some bonding with them because they were pretty much relating to my thoughts back then, and now to an extent. In fact, the brave hero in all this, the one who defies the master, is none other than Loudred, who isn't afraid to be bold and exclaim how stupid the whole mess is. Unfortunately for Loudred, This triggers Wigglytuff so badly that he starts a big earthquake in the middle of the guild. Ready to turn into man-child mode at any moment, Chatot gets into a panic, not wanting to see him unleash his devastating wrath, and orders everyone to pretend to be happy, which stops the earthquake and makes Wigglytuff quiet down. After the dumb temper tantrum, Wigglytuff heads back to his room as if nothing happened, leaving the duo to continue with their jobs. After the duo completes some jobs, they go to dinner like normal before heading to bed. However, Team Skull decides on that particular night to strike the guild's food storage, devouring the majority of it. The next morning, Chatot realizes that all their food is gone, and not wanting the guild to starve to death, they gave a vague warning to the duo to head out to the apple woods immediately to prevent Wigglytuff from realizing that his beloved perfect apples are gone, and to prevent the guild from starving. Although the duo is not quite sure on why Chatot is a bit too paranoid about Wigglytuff compared to the rest of the guild. Of course, 10-year-old me knew that he nearly caused an earthquake the day before, but nothing prepared me for the cold, cringe-worthy action that was about to take place. Upon entering the apple woods and clearing the dungeon, the main duo heads to bomb the forest, with Team Skull following right behind them as they plan to spring a trap on the duo. Expecting an epic boss fight with the team at the end of the dungeon, similar to the Team Meanie's boss fight from Red Rescue Team, I made sure to traverse the floors carefully, picking up every item I could along the way and preparing my arsenal for a boss battle if needed. I mean, I didn't expect a super difficult boss fight considering how we were in the early parts of the game, but since the enemy Pokemon were getting more and more tough, I had to be prepared. But sure enough, the duo reached the bottom of the apple woods, only to find out that Team Skull somehow beat them there first, devouring even more of the apples on the trees in the meantime. With only a few apples remaining, the partner refuses to fall for another obvious trap as Skuntank tries to lure them into a trap. Determined to show Skuntank and his minions how far she has grown as a character since joining the guild. As I expected, it seemed like the fairly decent boss fight was about to come up, one that would set the stage for showing more character development, the partner's growth, similar to the Team Meanie's boss fight in Rescue Team. On guard, ready to fight, planning out my strategy, I was anticipating another boss battle, a fierce fight, only to have the game pull a shitty move on me, basically having the villains get the last laugh in a cutscene as they use a gas attack on the duo, knocking both of them out along with Zubat, who they decide to leave behind and have no concern for. Upon coming to, they realize that all the apples are gone and they can't do anything. But of course, instead of searching for any possible trace of apple plants or apple seeds, they just give up like wimps and go back to Chatot, who flips out and refuses to hear the exact reasoning on why they were unable to get the perfect apples, despite the fact that there's no doubt the possibility that they still have the stench on them from Team Skull to prove who attacked them. Panicking like mad, Chatot immediately slaps the cruel punishment of starving our duo for the night, all while forcing them to watch the others eat happily, ordering them to tell Wigglytuff themselves the bad news of their failure afterwards. At this point, my 10-year-old self was growing more and more angry and impatient and furious on so many levels, wondering why Chatot was so stupid to not notice the stench, the fact that they gave up without any further effort to try and fix the situation or look for a seed at least for an apple, and most importantly, the fact that they wasted a perfectly good moment to develop the partner as a character. I'll even go as far as to say that this was the first moment in a video game that made me legitimately cringe at how horribly put together it all was. But we aren't quite done with Chapter 6 because we have the epic confrontation. Upon Chatot's questionable behaviors that could get Pokemon Protective Services called on him for abuse and starvation, the duo are forced to tell the surprisingly happy Wigglytuff the bad news. And at first it seems Wigglytuff's gonna forgive them, saying that how not everyone can win in life, which is true, a life lesson that should probably be learned by more people. I would have made the whole situation less painful to watch if it wasn't for Chatot having to break the news that the purple apples in storage were eaten. Upon hearing this, Wigglytuff and Chatot both break down, Chatot laughing hysterically as he fears the wrath of Wigglytuff. And sure enough, Wigglytuff has the biggest overreaction that I've ever seen. Not only does the earthquake from the day before starts up again, he lets out a hyper voice so loud it causes parts of the room to explode. That's right, he's so upset over a stupid, red, round piece of flute that he's willing to scream so loud that he could destroy the entire building in smoke and kill everyone inside. If that isn't the definition of overreaction, I have no clue what is. While I usually find the over-top nature amusing in any other circumstance, considering how angry I was this chapter to begin with, it just made me go, why? Why didn't they bother having the duel try to explain why they failed the mission? Why is Wigglytuff acting like a dummy? Or why? Well then, Skuntank pops in and delivers one apple, saving the entire guild from self-destructing. Chatot, relieved that the Guildmaster won't go on a mindless rampage and destroy or kill everyone inside, thanks Team Skull, and then puts blind trust into the criminals that are clearly bad. Upon departing from the scene, Team Skull mentions in private how they had to deliver the apple in order to get on Wigglytuff's good side so they can go to the expedition and steal the treasure, despite Zubat wondering why they didn't just watch the scene unfold because of how crazy it looked to be. As I was still recovering from the sheer stupidity of this whole chapter, Skuntank ended up being the one to sum it up best. Wigglytuff is just a big baby, baffled on why everyone is so terrified of him. It's not quite over yet though, as the next morning, Chatot acts like an even bigger jerk by informing the duo that there's no way they'll be picked for the great expedition, so they shouldn't get their hopes up. Without anything to eat, on the borderline of Pokemon abuse, Sunflower, Bidoof, and Chimecho of all people come to the rescue, giving them an apple to eat so they won't go hungry. Hooray for friendship, even though one of these three is someone I didn't even notice because she won some sort of recruitment center. However, the chapter is saved barely by a scene that reminds you that yes, this is a serious game, as a mysterious Pokemon that we saw earlier takes another of the mythical time gears. Being that small nudge that pushed me forward, I continued onward. Eventually learning from Chatot himself that the entire idea of not being picked for the expedition was pointless because Wigglytuff invites everyone, just to have more fun. Wigglytuff's reasoning? I started thinking about it and I got so excited I couldn't sleep. If that's what makes Wigglytuff overly excited, I dread to think how he would react if he knew how many Pokemon species were added since the release of this game. Because of Wigglytuff because he would go nuts with all those friends he had to make. That ends the doomsday of Chapter 6. Despite how they hyped it up in the last chapter about this great expedition that was gonna be a massive adventure worth taking, it ends up just being filler, for the most part. It talks about the Dimensional Scream ability, which is this flashback ability whenever the player touches a specific object, and it's not really explained well, but it triggers an event that leads to the guild finding Luxie, and after an amusing scene where Groudon and Wigglytuff say hi to each other, and outside of a fake Groudon boss battle, there's really nothing special in actually chapter 7 through 9, or even 10, which is where it gets a bit back on track. You see, in chapter 10, Dusknoir announces that he's a world-renowned explorer and visits the guild, and at that time, you have to go to the dreaded Ant Plains in order to defeat Team Skull, who hit Azul's floaty in Ant Plains, which is filled with electric type. Even though Azul's normal type, but that's a different story entirely. Case in point, you still don't get to fight Team Skull, Dusknoir saves the day, and basically, cause he's a ghost type, even I knew back then that he was not telling the full truth. He wanted me alive, but for what? We didn't know just yet. Thankfully though, they do give a clear hint to the player in the sense that Dusknoir seems to give this creepy little eye when he hears the player's name. That's what made me begin to put the pieces together from what I witnessed on YouTube and how I discovered Explorers of Time in the first place. As you will see in the last part, I mentioned a video of a Dusknoir and there's another Pokemon coming up that Well, now I was piecing them together and I knew what they were gonna do. Slight spoiler, but not really, it was kinda fun. However, Beef calls everyone back to the guild in order to let them know that a mysterious thief has stolen yet another time gear, and he's getting more and more aggressive. And that thief is none other than the super handsome Grovyle from the shadows. Ever since I read the Explorer's Guide, I knew from the beginning that Grovyle was the mysterious Pokemon at night, as if the silhouettes didn't give it away. Still, I always had a liking towards the evolutionary line of Treecko, Grovyle, and Sceptile, and Grovyle did seem like a fair fit for the thief and ninja role. Little did I know that the more I learned about him, the more side effect from my past would emerge. But I'll talk about that a bit later. Eventually, the duo arrive at Quicksand Desert to meet Mesprit. Unfortunately, the duo must fight Legendary in order to convince her that they are not trying to steal the time gear, but just as they do so, the three are interrupted by the thief, Grovyle, who appears in the flesh as the handsome little guy he is. Without breaking a sweat, he just nonchalantly comes in, pushes the duo aside, deals fatal damage to Mesprit in one strike. When I first saw the scene, I was completely in awe. Not only was this super cool thief, well, handsome looking, he was strong enough to deal fatal damage to a legendary Pokemon in one strike. If that isn't the definition of being a super cool, handsome dude, I don't know what is. Upon returning to the guild within an inch of being frozen in time because of the time gear removal, the duo alert the rest of the guild about Grovyle's dangerous power and wonder where he'll strike next. Dusknoir suspects that he's following a pattern, so therefore he's gonna strike Azelf's domain next, as he's the final Lake Guardian that is guarding the time gear. Thanks to the help of Biju's crystal that he found, the hero's Dimensional Scream ability alerts the guild to the secret behind Crystal Cave, allowing the duo to arrive to the depths of the Crystal Crossings, just in time to see Grovyle fatally wound Azelf, almost to the point of death. Yes, you heard me right, death. How do I know this? Because Azelf is clearly in serious pain, more so than Mesprit, and he mentions how he'll guard the time gears with his life, which triggers a self-defense system that steals the lake with crystals. Finally cornered, the duo confront Grovyle before engaging him in a battle over the time gears. A battle that I actually think is the best in the entire game for one reason alone. Why? Because it shows you how powerful Grovyle is. Believe it or not, this Grovyle is at level 44, when the average level at this point in the game would be around level 30 or so. This is a fight that you're allowed to lose, but you can win if you're a good enough player. When I was playing through it for the first time, I lost horribly to Grovyle, simply because he hits really hard, and his grass type attacks were essentially a one-hit KO for my Piplup. Chicory didn't have much trouble, but because I lost, she lost too. This lets the player see for themselves Grovyle's true power, and while you don't get any bonuses if you do beat him, it's still an awesome and epic fight nevertheless, and I always go for winning it whenever I replay the game. After the battle, Grovyle shrugs off whatever happens, depending on what is done in the battle, and strikes the duo so hard they actually end up paralyzed due to his almost overwhelming strength. Unable to move to their injuries, the partner refuses to give up, even as Grovyle threatens to kill the partner with his fatal blow. Just in the nick of time, Dusknoir appears, saving the partner's life. Surprised to see Dusknoir of all places, Grovyle gets very nervous and loses the chance to retreat, not gaining the time gear. Sadly, it's not without consequences, as both the duo and Azelf pass out due to their fatal wounds. It isn't until the next day when they get fully healed back in the guild will they then learn that Grovyle's on the run again upon failing to get the time gear. With Azelf fully healed now, the Lake trio head back to their homes, ready to capture him if he tried again. After a brief warning of the dangers of the removal of the time gears which would cause the planet to be frozen in time, Dusknoir reveals that he's from a dangerous future caused by Grovyle, which is why he's desperate to put a stop to his criminal actions and take him back to where he belongs. Sure enough, a few days later he manages to do just that, calling everyone to the square with proof of Grovyle's capture. It was at this point that I felt deja vu, because it was the same scene that I saw in that video that introduced me to the knowledge of the sequel. I knew what was coming up next. But before we get into that, can I just comment on why Grovyle looks so embarrassed compared to being afraid or scared or angry? I mean, why embarrassed? Unless Dusknoir... He is from the Shadow Realm. He has a dark secret and a dark obsession, and he's making Grovyle suffer. Back to the game. And sure enough, Dusknoir kidnaps the duo and pulls them into the Time Gate, sending them to the dark future along with Grovyle, beginning another gauntlet of dungeons and the true nature of the story. At this point, the game now starts to revolve around what some people consider to be the highlight of the story, which is the Future Saga, as dubbed by fans. Right off the bat, anyone can notice that this is not how it's supposed to be, as Lou and Leporno are in a strange grey room that's a jail cell, and Dusknoir is seen talking to a mysterious being that I couldn't even recognize at first, back then. Before long, his Saberlight henchmen come in and tie you up against some stone pillars where you're next to Grovyle. Your partner, being the one who blindly trusts everyone and is stupid, panics and asks why Dusknoir is doing such a thing, while you remain in silence and you aren't sure what to do. Grovyle, of course, finds the partner's stupidity amusing and points out that Grovyle was, surprise surprise, evil the whole time if you couldn't tell by his appearance. Which the partner refuses to believe, of course, but anyways, the Saberlight begin to attack the trio with their razor-sharp claws, and Grovyle gets an idea, and then they escape using an orb that blinds the whole room, causing Dusknoir not be able to see Lou escape. Of course, this doesn't last for long, as just like in the first game, you are on the run from a group of evil Pokemon. But instead of fugitives, you're now the only ones in the whole planet. Of course, eventually Grovyle gets frustrated with the partner's refusal to believe in him, so he bails on you and leaves the two to fend for themselves for a while. Before long, you reunite with Grovyle, who reluctantly allows you to tag along as the three of you hunt for his friend, a Celebi. Before we head into the Celebi part of the story, this is where I have to make a confession. I love Grovyle. But not just as a Pokemon that was raw in the game, I just really liked him a lot, as a character. From his personality, being the only one so far who takes things seriously, and he's just pretty much a cool badass in general, Grovyle is very memorable in almost every sense of the word in my opinion, and my 10-year-old self knew it very well. Well, I didn't think about much until a year later when Sky came out and they developed more on his story, which I'll mention another time. I grew to love Grovyle a lot as a character, and pretty much he's my favorite in the Explorer Saga, hands down. Although a lot of others do seem to think the same about this handsome lizard, I can't help but feel that, well, he is kind of cool, and I wish you could actually play as him as the main character. But moving on to the story, eventually the trio come across Celebi, who's a shiny in this game, and in Time and Darkness, it seems like she has a super subtle crush on Grovyle, but she just casually ignores like the cool dude he is. And bringing us right back to what I just mentioned about my love of Grovyle, you see, I have another confession to make. Most folks are aware about a little shadow realm in the internet called shipping. Yes, the evil word of romance, where you can pair up the most absurd of things and they will make sense somehow. Thanks to an internet search in 2009, because I was starting to use the internet more often, I found out about the shadow realm. And this is pretty much where I also discovered how people liked Grovyle and Celebi as a couple. And in my brutally honest opinion, most of these shippings that are on the internet for other fandoms are pretty much nothing more than crazy attempts at pairing completely unrelated characters with no logic or reason. For example, I could easily ship the Diglett from this game with Gardevoir from Rescue Team, and that would make about as much sense as the majority of ships on the internet. Well, anyways, back in 2009, as I mentioned before, after I learned about the existence of the Explorers of Sky special episodes, I also learned about an interesting fact about a key moment in one of them. which I'll touch about in another episode as mentioned before, but basically it kinda made the shipping of Grovyle and Selby my first and only shipping that I find intriguing to this day, because it is actually, despite it seeming like a generic cut and paste romance story, it gets a bit more involved and pretty much, in my opinion, is interesting to look at from a different perspective. It's not a far-fetched pairing, nor is it anything that can be taken to the story. Never mind, back to the game. After being guided by the duo to the bottom of the forest, you see the gate to the present, where Grovyle plans to gather the time gears to head to the Temporal Tower and fix the timeline. So the main duo go about their lives in the war in the Guild. However, before they can do that, Dusknoir catches up to them and brings a rather terrifying ally with them, Primal Dialga. That's right, Dusknoir's boss is shown in the flesh with an awesome cutscene showing just how powerful and menacing he is. When I first came across this scene as a kid, I was rather anxious, wondering if they'd be able to do like some sort of cool early boss fight with Primal Dialga to show his true power like they did with Grovyle not too long ago. Unfortunately, instead of doing a cool Chrono Trigger-esque boss fight, where you fight the final boss way early and can actually beat it if you strategize enough, they just simply make a normal cutscene, but still a rather powerful scene nonetheless, as he does nearly destroy the time portal, but Grovyle's about to give up. It seems impossible to survive the overwhelming power of Primal Dialga, and then Dusknoir drops a major plot point, that Grovyle's missing human partner from long ago has been reborn as a Pokemon with his memories wiped, as the result of a tragic accident from traveling back in time. This explains his motivation for targeting the main duo, and how he tried to gain their trust back in Treasure Town, but his mission was not only to find Grovyle and kill him, rather, he also wanted to kill and eliminate the partner who may have escaped. As a kid, this was a massive shock to me, as no longer was it just simply a generic idea of a storm at sea making the human drown and be reincarnated as a Pokemon, which I actually thought was the main story at the time. Instead reveals a kind of disturbing take where the humans from a post-apocalyptic future and he and Grovyle have to save the world by traveling back in time. It just seems weird that an accident made it act differently than planned. Grovyle, shocked upon hearing this news but relieved that his partner's back, is stunned, but then Selby uses the window of time to teleport them to the time gate, only for Primal Dialga to shatter their teleport, which forces them to quickly run through the time gate without Selby, and with the scary risk of Primal Dialga destroying the gate. Thankfully, they manage to successfully escape and end up on the beach, home, and ending the Gauntlet of the Future saga. From here, the game pretty much goes on autopilot until the ending, with the only major plot event, especially in my case, that ended up happening was when you and Chatot have to go to Blind Cave in order to go to the bottom of the dungeon and find out the mystery of the relic fragment that the partner owns. So Chatot is an escort to the main duo while Grovyle does whatever for a while. Of course, the first thing I did back then, and what I assume hopefully a lot of others did, was have Chatot die to the enemy Pokemon as revenge for his jerkish behavior for the entire game. Unfortunately, that fun ended up being my downfall as a kid, as I actually got stuck on the game. No, I'm dead serious, guys. Outside the normal breaks I'd have during the summer where I went back to Pokemon Pearl, I was stuck on this dungeon from wasting all my items and losing on purpose just to spite Chatot, which came back to haunt me as the enemy Pokemon here are downright evil in this dungeon, as the enemy Pokemon do massive damage to their team and make them all faint, which is kind of evil at this point in the game. And so, in the summer of 2009, I got frustrated with this game. I tried my best to beat it, and honestly, I just get stuck in Blind Cave and keep dying and dying and dying and dying to the enemies. And even though you can send out SOS mails over Wi-Fi, like it says on the back of this box, which I did use a few times in other dungeons, it never seemed to help, because once I get revived, I would just faint a few floors later, and it would be pretty much all for naught. So, I put this game far away and shelved it. And so the summer of 2008 came and went without much fanfare. I just went to other games for a while, and in the end, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Explorers of Time was more or less that one game that was a sequel that I really did not like at all, and pretty much I just couldn't stand. It was getting interesting, but it was far too late for me to stay attached. So I just put it away and played other DS games that came out that year. Even though that was actually the year I started not playing much games at all. It wasn't until October of 2008 when I got into the Animal Crossing series that I started playing video games again. And even then, I kind of was interested in the ending of Explorers of Time. So, during the summer of 2008, I did something that I'll probably regret for the rest of my life, and I know I certainly regretted it back then. And that was none other than spoiling the ending. Yes, this was the time where young me found a site called YouTube. Believe it or not, while trying to find more information on the adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, I came across the website. Yeah, horrible show asides, that's how I discovered this place. Anyways, I found a few YouTube videos around from a guy named XYOUX, a Let's Player who went through Vanilla Explorers, in other words, Time in Darkness, around the North American launch. Finding myself sick of dying in Blind Cave over and over again, I decided to watch the next few cutscenes. And just like I did then, I'll just reveal to you what I pretty much was spoiled about, cutscenes and all. If the current summary wasn't a massive spoiler already, then be warned. I learned from watching his videos that Team Skull somehow ended up at the Blind Cave after the events of the expedition, wanting revenge on the guild for the defeat. Therefore, Skuntank steals the relic fragment again, and the duo give chase, and it's revealed that the entire reason for Chatot's rash behavior was because of a tragedy that happened in Blind Cave, where Kabutops and Amistar severely wounded Chatot and could have killed him if it wasn't for Wigglytuff saving his life. It kinda makes you almost feel bad for the guy, but considering how he's been a jerk the entire game, it's too little too late. Afterwards, you arrive at the bottom of Blind Cave, Grovyle, and a Pokemon named Lapras, who's actually the only way to reach the Hidden Land, which is the bridge to the Rainbow Stone ship that leads to Temporal Tower. And they arrive at the Hidden Land. Watching more, I soon learned literally every remaining plot twist of the main story, all thanks to my poor gameplay skills. I learned that Dusknoir ambushes you and tries to take you by force in the Hidden Land. I learned that you fight him in a fierce battle, while also revealing in private to your main character that if the world is saved, you will be erased from history and your partner will be devastated. And that Grovyle ends up sacrificing himself to stop Dusknoir and to let you and your partner go put the Time Eaters back in Temporal Tower. Of course, after being Primal Dialga and the partner not being aware of the whole situation, you tell the partner in a kind of sad scene that you have to say goodbye and that you did enjoy your time with him or her, and basically you fade away into existence as the partner is depressed and heads home alone to report the news of their victory. The world saved, sad ending, Beef comforts the partner, and then after the credits, Dialga realizes that the partner is super depressed and tries to revive the player character in order to make her happy. And sure enough, he does, and the player character returns, ending the main story. A few months passed, and as I went about my normal life, as I mentioned earlier, playing Animal Crossing, getting into that series, and just having fun in general as I went through 5th grade in my school, I heard in January of 2009 about a little update called Explorers of the Sky, which was basically, at the time, I thought was a sequel to Explorers of Time and Darkness. This would supposedly reveal more about what happened to Grovyle and some other characters after the events of the main story, and I was a bit intrigued, wondering, maybe I can get into this story again if they make it good. Needless to say, I'd personally found out close to the Japanese launch it was just Explorers of Time and Darkness. This game, repackaged, and plopped out as this game, with not much differences outside of extra story content, which makes this game completely pointless. Needless to say, as the months got closer to the April 2009 release in Japan for Explorers of Sky, I was a bit was getting a bit of a craving to play Explorers of Time again and beat Blind Cave in the rest of the main story. So I did. I persevered and finally cleared that tough dungeon, and cleared another tough dungeon with the Hinland before taking on Primal Dialga. Thankfully, considering how much levels I gained because of how much I died in Blind Cave because of my own stupidity, Primal Dialga wasn't too tough as long as I kept spamming powerful attacks and managing to get Reviver Seeds to revive from his War of Time. The ending, now that I knew all about it, didn't have any impact on me at all, except for crying during the Memories theme. So, just like I expected, Explorers of Time and Darkness ended with, okay, this is mediocre. What's next? Then I realized there was a post-game that's actually good. Just a little bit more and I would have had tons of content to entertain myself with over the fall of 2008, but because I skipped it, I missed out on a ton. Let's fast forward a little bit to April of 2009. Right as Explorers of Sky was about to be launched in Japan, they aired an anime special that was the sequel to the infamous 2007 anime special that I agonized over as the year before. Needless to say, upon hearing it would be a direct sequel and would have the same characters, Team Pokepals, Piplup, and Chimchar, I was intrigued. I remember being at my aunt's house that weekend, of the 12th I believe, and staying up late at night to see when Pokemon Sunday would show the special episode, and I fell asleep before it could actually air in Japan, but I woke up like a few hours later and sure enough on YouTube a WoW version of the Japanese special was aired. I was actually so excited for this episode because I heard it would show the end of the game that I was intrigued on how they would portray it. I thought maybe they would recap all that happened while they went after Grovyle and then found Dusknoir and found him wanting to take over the world. Maybe that would make it a super epic action-packed special. Well, no. We don't get any backstory. None. Just some minor stuff about the Time Gears and Dialga, maybe some Pokemon freezing in time. But no, it just starts with Grovyle, Chimchar, and Piplup being on Lapis's back. Keep in mind that at the end of the Explorers of Time and Darkness special, Piplup and Chimchar was going to get Grovyle in order to stop him from stealing Time Gears. And with no catch-up on what happened in this mysterious gap, you have a gigantic plot hole that even at the time I thought was completely baffling. And even though there were no subtitles, it was pretty apparent that this plot hole was a big problem. For one thing, they act like Grovyle's the best friend in the whole world, which, in terms of looking at the last episode, they think Grovyle's a pretty big dum-dum who's evil and is stealing Time Gears. Second, we have no clue what the heck a Dusknoir even is. How are people who watched the first special supposed to know that Dusknoir is an evil Pokemon wanting to destroy time? And what's Primal Dialga got to do with this? How'd he get Primal? These questions would be answered to play the game, but needless to say, it was a very underwhelming special. Especially when you consider that the majority of it is just an overly long fight scene with Dusknoir and Sableye that takes up way longer than it needs to be and kind of, well, wastes the episode. Sure, you get some pretty music back in the background when Grovyle sacrifices himself and when Piplup has to think about leaving Chimchar behind, but when they put the stone into the Rainbow Stone ship and go to Temporal Tower, it ends. No to be continued. They literally end it when they go to fight Primal Dialga. Now, outside of having pretty credits music, which a good YouTuber I remember watching at the time called Rebellious Trico ripped and uploaded to YouTube, I really like that music track. In fact, I downloaded it back in the day and enjoyed listening to it on my iPod Shuffle because of how amazing it was. Alas, they never put it on CD, nor the actual Explorers of Time game soundtrack. But it was interesting leftover from an otherwise underwhelming special. Either way, I felt that an English dub was inevitable like the first two anime specials, and if there was a DVD this time, I wouldn't buy it for a higher price, cause I learned my lesson from making my grandmother buy me the Explorers of Time and Darkness DVD in 2008. For $60, which I still feel horrible for to this day. What I did not expect, however, was I'd pretty much have no choice in getting the DVD, cause at GameStop it was bundled with all pre-order copies of Explorers of Sky. Meaning that a lot more people have seen this episode than the other two Pokemon Mystery Dungeon specials, because outside the Cartoon Network airings, it has never aired since. The dubbed version of the anime special aired around the time that the game came out in October of 2009 in the West. And of course, because it was dubbed on Cartoon Network, tons of people got to see it, and they reran the first two anime specials as well. However, they never aired it on TV ever again after this, at least not in North America. So this DVD was the only way you could even rewatch it if you missed it the first time. But imagine being a kid, never hearing of the game before, and watching the DVD only to see the entire endgame of the main story spoiled for you. That probably would have felt very odd. Of course, like the dubs for the other two specials, Beyond Time and Darkness used old 4Kids Entertainment actors who worked with Pokemon USA after the casting split in 2006. If you found the My Valentine Piplup voice odd to hear in the last special, sorry, but she returns. Piplup is still Mai, Dusknoir is Odion, the servant of Merrick Ishtar from the Battle City arc in Yu-Gi-Oh!, and Grovyle is still Lami Yugi, and since he talks a lot in this episode, it kind of is a bit funny to watch the English dub without thinking Grovyle's a card-playing expert. And not to geek out much here, but in Yu-Gi-Oh!, it kind of is eerie because Odion is the servant to Yugi's main enemy in the Battle City season, which is Merrick Ishtar. In Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, Dusknoir is the servant to Grovyle's main enemy, and that's Primal Dialga, which means that if they actually gave Primal Dialga a voice, it would be stupid not to have him talk in that, well, creepy little deep voice filter they gave in the later part of the season. Needless to say, outside of some fun oddities in the English dub, the whole special is pretty poor and is almost on par with the first Pokemon Mystery Dungeon 2 special in terms of how bad it is. Outside of the nice background music I mentioned earlier, there's not much to this anime special, regardless of what language you watch it in. I don't want to pad out the review with pointless, retrospectives on parts of the game I didn't like, which is the majority of the special episodes. Instead, I feel that after I take a short break and review the other parts of the Mystery Dungeon retrospective and some other non-Pokemon games, I will give Special Episode 5 of Explorers of Sky its own episode. So that way I will redeem myself from the inevitable mediocre quality of this review, which I do apologize for, and I did do my best to get this out in a timely manner, but considering the massive scale of the project, I just couldn't take it. Needless to say, I hope you enjoyed my memories and my kind of fishy complaints on the Explorer saga. It wasn't all happy and cheery like Rescue Team was for me. It was just a dull experience that kind of had some good moments and some awesome characters like the ever so sexy Grovyle. Don't tell anyone. But needless to say, Explorers wore off on me. There are a few interesting little bits of merchandise you can collect if you're a massive fan of the game, which pretty much everyone else is at this point, considering how the Mystery Dungeon subreddit and the majority of people on the Miiverse love Explorers of Sky the most. Here's some Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Explorers merchandise you can go and look up. First up is the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon 2 manga. From the same author of Jinji's Rescue Team, this story, instead of pulling a stupid comedy version of the original games, it goes for a fateful, darker tone compared to the original games, which is always saying a lot because Explorers of Time and Darkness was rather dark in terms of its plot. And in terms of merchandise, outside the uber rare plush toys I mentioned earlier, there's also, of course, the DVD you can go after, and the guidebooks, and some of the minor little trinkets they sold in Japan that go along with the game. Like, for example, the Explorers of Time and Darkness toy collection, where those little pieces of the backdrop from the box art, which I think looks really cute. And that about wraps it up for all the merchandise for Explorers. Not much, but some obscure stuff you may have not heard about, like the mangas, for one thing. And yeah, after 9 months of a long development hell and just playing the game again, gaining the courage to express my true opinions on this game, we are finally done with the Mystery Dungeon Part 3 on Eternal Memories. In conclusion, outside of all the pointless going in circles rambling that I know will probably make people disappointed, I don't like this game that much. As a game, excluding the story, it's a fun dungeon crawler with some good music and pretty graphics. But compared to Blue and Red Rescue Team, it just doesn't have the same emotional impact on me. Maybe it's because I spoiled the main story ending. I don't think Explorers of Time or Sky are really the best in the series, not even close. I do think the special episode 5 in this game is by far the absolute best reason to pick this one up, but since it's a bit expensive, you might as well get the virtual console version of it. But yeah, I sincerely apologize if this episode was certainly not the expectations. I mean, I did promise it would be the most in-depth Explorers of Sky retrospective, but when there's not much about these games, and when this game didn't really catch on when I went back and looked at it with a harder critical analysis instead of rose-tinted glasses, I just couldn't get myself involved much. Handsome Grovyle aside, Explorers of Sky is a game that I think you should get if you're interested even slightly in this installment, but for the love of Arceus, skip Time and Darkness. They're worthless, they don't need to exist anymore. This is the definitive version. Until next time, this is Seafoam Gaming, and I say, bye! Well, I finally did it, guys. I completed Eternal Memories 3. It took ages. Development hell that I mentioned in the update video, demotivation that I also mentioned, and not to mention just being busy in general. I decided to finally get the courage and go ahead. Even if my opinions may be unpopular, even if this video is amateurish compared to what a real retrospective is, this is my passion, and I aim to make it as good as possible. Feel free to subscribe if you want to check out my other gameplay videos, or look forward to the next episodes, because after this I'm gonna go on a little break from PMD and go on to normal games. Which ones? Well, you can vote in the Strawpoll in the description. I'll see you then, and please, enjoy my content, and I thank you for enjoying my passion if you made it this far.